Attention Big Blue Nation. Welcome to Kentucky Basketball Then and Now, a unique exploration of America's paramount collegiate hardwood program, featuring anecdotes and memories from the 1950s forward to the very latest on everything UK hoops. Kentucky Basketball Then and Now seats Wildcat fans front court and center. Here's Lexington native and SEC standout Gary Waddell and Owensboro native and Rough Front senior student manager Mike Harreld.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Kentucky Basketball Then and Now. I've got Mike Harreld with me today and also Richard Down. A little unusual, we're all three in the studio today. Before we get going, I'd like to mention a couple feel-good stories. We can never hear too many of those, but one I meant to mention last week and failed to do so, but it's Reed Shepherd going up on the same day as a blue-white game to Pikeville and putting on a clinic for young kids. I think Jeff had a hand in that also, but they raised $10,000, which, of course, they turned right around and gave it to the Kentucky Flood Relief Fund, so that was a nice gesture. And also, and this one's gotten national attention, a fellow by the name of Michael McGuire. If you aren't familiar, he's the coal miner who wanted to take his son or sit with his son at the blue-white game. And evidently he got out of the mine later than expected, so he hurried over the 30 miles to Pikeville, had coal dust all over him, black coal dust in his beard and so forth. But he was somehow seen or noticed by Calipari. And of course, I think we've all read or know that Calipari's relatives were coal miners. And so Cal somehow made an introduction, and long story short, he invited this Michael down to UK game and said he and his family would get the VIP treatment. So that's a nice story also. I noticed last week that Tyrese Maxey scored 44 points in a game for Philadelphia, and P.J. Washington scored 31 for the Hornets. Did a little research. P.J.'s hitting 36% from the three-point lane, so he's done a lot of practicing of that since he left UK. Also, this surprised me, and it's Jeff Goodman, who's been around the media world for quite some time. He most recently with ESPN, but he's now with Stadium Network. And he had a list of his top transfers a couple days ago, and he had Antonio listed as number 40. And I think number 30. And I think we're all surprised and that he was that low, but then after seeing Antonio play Sunday, maybe that's a little more realistic. He was 2 for 7 from the field and 0 for 4 from the three-point line. And we were just talking among ourselves before we started recording that hopefully he remains a good three-point shooter. CJ is going to be one, but we got to have two. We saw last year what can happen when we only have one and they play the shooter tight, and we got no place to go but inside to try to get a shot off. But speaking of the game Sunday night, I thought it was a poor performance. UK committed 17 turnovers to 6 for Missouri Western. Missouri Western out-rebounded UK by 1, and I realized Oscar wasn't there, but we had, 4 guys over 6'9" on the team left. Of course, they all didn't play at the same time, but I didn't think that was very good at all. And we didn't shoot well. We were 40% from the outside and then just 7 for 21 from the three-point lane. So there's some growth. I realize we hadn't even played a regular game yet, but I also realized who we were playing, who was not that good. But I think they were well coached, and it was good to see Perry Stevenson on the bench and John Hood. And I thought if Will Martin would go back and get a tie-dye shirt, we'd have a Grateful Dead concert. He was with his beard and long hair. He's a different type of coach, evidently, but I think a good coach. They appear to be well coached. So we look forward to Thursday night. Kentucky State comes into town. They have a freshman guard from Henry Clay, Aziel Blackwell, who will be coming in with Kentucky State. And I know that's got to be a big game from him. I know for experience coming back to Lexington and playing before your friends and relatives is a big deal, and it sure was for me the 4 times I came back to Lexington. Yeah, and also something that surprised me by the margin of a loss, but most schools are having what they call these secret practices. They're anything but secret, but I guess fans could not attend the games, and it appears that UK may have been caught flat-footed on this. Every SEC school but Kentucky played one of these games, and Florida, Vanderbilt, and Tennessee played two. But Arkansas went to Austin, Texas, I guess it was on Friday night, and lost by 30, which surprised me. Arkansas, along with Tennessee, are supposed to fight it out with UK for the SEC championship this year, and maybe that's a great sign for us that Arkansas may not be as strong as we think they may be. They lost a lot, but they have, by some people's estimation, number one recruiting class in the country coming in. So that is Cal was asked about this, and some teams have been doing it for a number of years. Cal was asked about it and said, well, it's something I think we need to consider, but keep in mind that basketball pays for all the non-revenue producing sports. And I'm sure if Stoops heard that, he would be pissed off again, but I think he's got more fish to fry than that right now.
Yeah, so are these secret practice games? Is this something allowed? I mean, what's secret about
it's got to be because, it's common knowledge to the writers and so forth, but it's not I got on a website to get the information that almost every Power 5 school has played one. There are about 3 exceptions. Louisville didn't play one of these games. They don't count, of course, but they're scrimmages against a real good team, if that's who you select. And, Cal was talking about the money. I mean, if you get Cincinnati or Xavier to come down or we go up there, that would cost very little money. So
I was going to say, I didn't understand the connection to the money. It looks like if it was published in Kentucky, you would get a reasonably good crowd.
Well, you can't get crowds, though, I think.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
You might as well call it an exhibition game.
Yeah, so this is a cost without any revenue.
That's right.
Okay.
It's a chance to see what you got playing a good team rather than, like we're playing non-conference first few games in exhibition, playing against a real good team. And we need one of those to be prepared for Michigan State here in a couple of weeks. But so anyway, hopefully they'll. It's a little early to start getting down on the Cats. And I don't mean to do that, but
on the positive side, I thought the effort was good.
Yep.
And they seem to be really trying to play defense, and that's the key. The really good Kentucky teams have been, obviously they can score, but they've really been good on defense. So I was glad to see that effort. Yeah,
I think Cal said he was impressed with CJ, who hit 4 out of 6 of his 3-pointers and gets the shot off quickly. And then also Carson Wallace. Carson was only 3 for 10 from the field and 1 for 4 from the threes. But he told the sports writers, don't be surprised if he plays because he gets a lot done besides shooting and his defense and hustle and so forth. So that was an interesting comment by Cal.
And there's been some jokes about some of the top Kentucky teams and other top players that they were the big star in high school, and so they think defense is something somebody else plays in order to get them the ball.
Well, you're right,
and if you got that attitude, you're in trouble.
And they couldn't foul out, or being the only good player on the team primarily, they would lose. So I think coach tells them that once they get the third fouls, basically just use the Matador defense, just kind of wave at them as they go by. So, Richard, what do you have for us today?
Well, several episodes ago, we talked about the winningest coaches in men's college basketball. Coach Rupp, of course, being among them. I thought today would give a nod to the winningest players at Kentucky anyway. There have been 30 players on UK men's teams that won 100 games or more, at least 100 wins over the course of their career. And the most recent of those was Darius Miller, who last played in 2012 on the team that won Kentucky's last national championship. Darius's teams won 124 games in his 4 years at UK, enough to put him at third on the all-time list behind Wayne Turner, who had 131 wins, and Ralph Beard, 129 wins. Turner last played in 1999, Beard in 1949, ways back.
Passed away a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Is that right?
Yeah.
All right. each of these guys and all the other 27 on that list played 4 seasons, a rarity nowadays, which is no doubt probably the main reason, or certainly a big reason why there's nobody been added to that list since Darius in 2012.
Yeah, and most times, in normal times, if there is such a thing like normal anymore, you only get 3 varsity years.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was before 73. That was 72, 73 was the first year that freshmen could play on the varsity. And, of course, schools did away with the freshman teams and saved 10 scholarships. Scholarship limit went from 25 to 15. And I don't know if it was primarily to save money, but you got to, when you compare things, Issel broke the school record in scoring or is a school record holder.
Yeah.
It did it in 3 years. Second or third's Kenny Walker, and he had 4 years to do it. So you got to compare apples to apples.
Right. Well, Darius is a great player. I would think he would have had draft potential his 4th year, but he chose to stay. And I guess maybe he saw a national championship in the offing coming.
Well,
you think as he looked ahead, for whatever reason, he stayed a 4th year. Came to UK in 2008 from Mason County High School, having been named a 3rd-team parade All-American, as well as Kentucky Mr. Basketball, an honor given to the best high school player of the year in Kentucky. So he played 152 games, though, in 4 seasons, which is most of any UK player ever, one more than Wayne Turner's 151-game total. And the game that put Darius over the top was the 2012 National Championship game.
Yeah, those were good times.
With
Patino and with those guys. And Wayne Turner played for Tubby and played for Patino, of course. Another interesting thing, doing a little research, Perry Stevenson is the only UK player ever to play for 3 UK coaches.
All right. That's a good one.
Yeah, played for Tubby. Tubby left. He played 2 years for Billy and then played the first year for Cal coming in.
All right.
And that'll probably never change. You got to have one of those coaches have a very short career at UK to make that possible.
Yeah,
it's been a 4-year span, or 5 maybe. And but anyway, I hope Perry does well. He had gone into another line of business at first, and then decided he missed basketball. He played overseas, or played in the G League, equivalent of it back then, and got into coaching. And Will Martin, of course, helped John Hood, too. They knew each other when Martin was the manager, and came, I guess, pretty good friends. But one of the first calls Will made when he got the job was to John to see if he wanted to join him as assistant coach. So I hope they do well. They looked like they were well coached the other night. Again, there were some key stats where they beat Kentucky. So, Mike, what do you got for us?
Well, I was just thinking this week about, this is kind of a down time of the year for basketball. It's starting to get going, but it's not really into the swing of things. But comparing to the times when you and I were there, Gary, it's a lot more exciting, and that they got a lot more games, whether you call them exhibition games or secret practice games or whatever. There's a lot more games. Most of the time when we were there, it was a scrimmage against the blue and the white, and that gets a little boring after you've been doing that for probably six days a week, sometimes 7. And so we did, the last couple of years I was at UK, we brought in Transylvania, which is another university there in Lexington. At the time, C.M. Newton was their coach, and had a scrimmage just in practice, not any publicity or anything, but just give you somebody else to play against and kind of break the monotony. So today it's a whole lot better in terms of here it is, November the 1st, and we've already had one of the exhibition games, and as you said, we got another one coming up Thursday. But this is a critical time that most fans don't get very much information about, so they can't really tell what's going on. But when you're in there practicing every day, this is the time of the year that can really make a difference. work on your. Hopefully, you've been doing it in the off season, and now you're really smoothing out those skills. But you're really practicing things and getting ready for the season when you don't have as much time to practice. So you make those incremental gains as the this time of the year, starting October 15th, and of course when we were there, about the December 1st was the first real game. And of course, one of the things Coach Rupp was famous for was very focused, concentrated, driven practices every day. All 4 years I was there, every practice started with a 30-minute shooting practice where every player has a ball and there's no lollygagging around whatsoever. You're practicing your moves, you're following your shot and putting it back in if you miss, and then go back to working on your various moves. And not a sound is made other than the pat, pat, pat of the basketball dribbling on the floor, and everybody is focused, and there's at least 6, sometimes 8 goals spread around the Memorial Coliseum floor, so that there's plenty of goals for people to practice. So you usually had about maybe two people, 3 at most, at any goal. And we have said before, one of Coach Rupp's rules was when the media asked him if his players could speak during practice, his quote was, yes, if they think they can improve on silence. So as a result, there was almost no talking. It was all practice.
Like, if I can interrupt a second, if you were a guard shooting from the outside, it almost became somewhat of a conditioning drill, because
yes,
playing at Lafayette, there was occasions where we played the Kentucky freshman team, and they used to let us, rather than just get through with that and leave, they let us watch the practice for a few minutes, and they could not lollygag walking after the ball.
No, that's right.
They had to sprint to the ball, then shoot it, and by the end of it, they had to be getting tired.
Oh yeah, it was 30 minutes of as much practice shooting and real, making it in real game conditions as is humanly possible. And the media and the fans and other coaches always said, well, Kentucky had teams that shot well, and they generally did and do, but the reason was that they worked on it very, very hard every day. I don't recall a practice where we didn't start with the 30-minute shooting, focused, concentrated drill. So
after that, Mike, I think they did the guard around drill, don't they?
Right, where you run. We used to call them 6 and 10. Six was where the guard passed the ball and went inside the forward, cutting to the basket, and 10 was a bounce pass and going outside the forward, and then he would either give it back to that guard or dribble across the middle and hand it off to the other guard while he was actually setting a pick for his man. Those were the 2 basic plays that Kentucky ran when Coach Rupp was there. In fact, some of the players joked that there was some question about whether one of our practice games they were going to let the media in, and they said, well, the media doesn't need to come. They've seen 6 and 10 before.
Yeah.
But the key to that was that we practiced it so focused and so conscious and had all the routines. Like if the other team went inside, we knew what to do. If they went outside, we knew what to do. It was they knew what we were going to run, basically, but they didn't know which way we were going, and they had to keep up with us because we were cutting and driving to the basket. And so it was a very, very successful program. And so what was really added that my senior year, the Rupp's Runts year, we talked the other day, and if we want to in the future, we can come back to this because it was really important, about how the preseason conditioning helped the team and got the players in very good shape so that they could then come maybe have a couple of practices where we worked more on routine and drills and didn't do a full court scrimmage, but then we could come back and do a full court scrimmage on that third day and get everybody back to peak shape. And then during the season, we won a lot of games in the last three minutes simply because we were in much better shape than the other team. Going into like the last 4 minutes, you check a lot of those scores, you'll see Kentucky is maybe 2 ahead or 2 behind, but then they quickly put some distance between them and the other team in those last few minutes. And obviously they were skilled players, but also a huge part of it was their conditioning. So my senior year, we weren't supposed to be particularly good. I think we were ranked by most of the media as either third or fourth in the SEC. And we had 4 starters coming back, but the season before hadn't been all that impressive.
15-10.
Yeah, and the one new player was probably going to be Thad Jerez, which it was. He was the 5th runt. Cliff Berger was also in the action and pushed Thad a lot, but Thad was the quicker, and he had that nice little running little hook shot that made him very, very effective. But when the season started, we weren't supposed to be very, very good. But I remember the first day, October 15th of practice, Coach Rupp set us down, and one of the things he said to them was, "You can be very good, and we're going to get out of you things that you don't even know that you've got in you. And don't you believe the media, you just come in here and get to work." And to their credit, although there were times when people got tired and disgruntled, of course, but the players laid it on the line. And it was the most grueling 6 weeks of basketball that I've ever experienced. There were days I left my apartment going to a class and then on to the gym, and I was thinking that if I see another basketball, I might throw up. And so when the manager's thinking that, you gotta realize some of the players have really been pushed to the limit. But to their credit, they all hung in there, and so we practiced every day, and some of the time we were coming back on usually Tuesday and Thursdays. We had two practices. Our regular practice, which would start somewhere around 3 to 3:30, depending on class times, and go till 5 or so, and then Coach Rupp would have everybody go over and get their dinner at the student center, and then be back for a 7 or 7:30 practice that lasted another hour and 15 minutes. So there was a lot of basketball going on, a lot of work, a lot of intensity, and some grumbling. There were times when I remember a couple of team meetings where some of the players were very unhappy at how hard they were being pushed and driven, and they wanted to go to the president of the university or to the media. And to their credit, the leaders on the team, Tommy Cron and Larry Conley, said, "No, we're going to hang in here, and we're going to do what the old man says, and we're going to do our best." And then Pat Riley would back them up with saying, "That's right." And so it was a real example of leadership and effort, but there was a lot of blood and guts and tears and sweat on that floor every day. And I remember as those practices started and we were into the late October and then into November, and we were scrimmaging each other, and things just weren't, for most part, clicking. And, of course, one of my jobs was to referee the scrimmages. And I remember several times thinking that, things are just not working. And, my legacy, to the extent there was going to be one, was to be the student manager for the worst team Coach Rupp ever had. That was my secret concern, and fortunately, that turned out to be 100% wrong. But it was really grueling, and it just at times it just wasn't clicking. And one of the things about Coach Rupp is he had great vision, and he could see who could play and who couldn't, and he could see that his team could play better than they were playing. And so in practice, he would get very frustrated because he wasn't getting out of them what he saw. That, to his credit, he saw a lot more in them than I did at times. But he kept pushing and screaming and urging and cussing and pushing and
running them.
Oh yeah, we ran and I mean anything he could think of. And so the going into the Thanksgiving weekend, and as I look back on that year, and when we got through, you kind of lean back and you say, okay, we started thinking we were going to be the fourth in the SEC, and we finished clearly the best in the SEC, and clearly we were ranked number one in the season rankings, and then we finished, of course, second to Texas Western in the tournament. But it far exceeded most people's expectations, and we did it in a style that people loved, and that it was a run and gun, but well thought out. We weren't just throwing it at the basket. They were all working to get an open shot. And the beauty of it was that once they got clicking, nobody was caring who scored. It was just get the ball to the open person and let them shoot. And all of the players, given that they were in a reasonable position on the floor, were capable of scoring. So if you go back and look at that team, there, of course, Riley and Dampier were the big stars, but there were games when Tommy Cron got over 30, Larry Conley got over 30 a few times, and of course Thad did also a great exhibition of that in one of the early season games at Illinois, where I don't remember exactly how many.
The snow game?
The Illinois game up at Urban, Illinois, was about our third or fourth game. And it was a Big Ten team, and nobody knew how good we were going to be. And we went up there and laid it on the line and beat them by about 20 points, as I recall. And that was one of the first times everybody started paying attention to us. But what really, as I think back, turned the season or got the practices really clicking, and I've tried for years to try to figure out how to put my finger exactly on what happened, but it happened during Thanksgiving weekend. The normal drill for the first 3 years I had been there was that we would have a practice on Wednesday like normal, and then have a practice early Thursday morning, and then let everybody go home that lived anywhere in the area, and so they would be home Thursday and Friday, and then we would come back for, say, a mid-afternoon practice on Saturday, and then probably again on Sunday. And that gave everybody a chance to be with their family for Thanksgiving and still have a good set of practices, and it worked pretty well. So I think, after seeing that for three years, most of us were thinking that would be somewhat similar this year. And so we started with our normal scrimmage on a day like Wednesday, because we would be taking off part of Thursday. And the scrimmage started, and it just was not pretty. It was probably the worst scrimmage I think I ever remember at Kentucky. For some reason, this team had not clicked yet, and the ball wasn't moving, and things weren't happening. And Coach Rupp came to practice every day he had carefully thought out who were the best 5 players, and they were the white team and then the next 5 that were scrimmaging against him were the blue team. And he might switch them at halfway through or something if somebody really is showing improvement or somebody's not doing well. But he already had it planned for what was to happen. And at that point in the season, the 5 best players that he thought ought to be together were on what he called the white team. They were wearing the white shirts. Well, the white team wasn't any better than the blue team, and in fact, at times it was worse. And so we started this scrimmage, and the normal routine would be we would scrimmage for, say, 15 minutes, and then they would call a halt, and everybody would run to a goal and start shooting foul shots. And Coach Rupp, who always lined up on the opposite side of the floor at Memorial Coliseum from all the score tables and stuff, where we had several people charting whatever we were doing so that Coach Rupp could take it home at night and study it. And so then during the stop and play, everybody shooting foul shots, Coach Rupp would kind of bounce across the floor, and he had a pretty big belly, and he was kind of a comical-looking figure as he bounced across that floor. But any comedy went away when he started looking at the sheets and giving people heck. And that was normal to a certain extent. Somebody was going to get fussed at every part of the scrimmage because their statistics were showing they weren't doing what they should. But in this practice, he was particularly upset that things weren't working. And so he called a halt, and me as the manager, I was moving around making sure we had things, towels and water, and we always kept a tub of ice cold water at the end of the floor in case somebody turned their ankle, they could stick it in there, and all the little details that you had to have for practice. I was just checking all that, as I always did. And all of a sudden, Coach Rupp stopped about probably 15 feet from the scorer's table where people were keeping stats, and all of a sudden he screamed, "Manager!" And of course I jumped about 20 feet because I was normally not the target of his lectures during that time. And he said, and every other word was a cuss word, get a blankety-blank towel. There is a blankety-blankety drop of water on this floor. There must be a blankety-blank hole in the roof because none of these blankety-blank players are working hard enough to sweat and leave any water on the floor. And so he cusses that drop of water for a few minutes more and goes over to the scorer's table and starts looking at the stats. And, of course, they obviously weren't going to look very, very good, or we already knew that. And so he got so mad that he literally tore up the stat sheets into a bunch of shredded paper and threw it behind the scorer's table. And, of course, by that time I had gotten the dreaded drop of water off the floor, but he came back to where the drop of water had been, and he gave it another good cussing. And to say that he was not happy would be an understatement for sure. So then he goes back across the floor to his normal position, and we start scrimmaging again. And sometime, when you get on a roll, it can really go well if you're going well, but it can do the opposite when you're not doing well. In this case, that's what happened. It was the opposite, and the scrimmage just got worse. And so a few minutes into that scrimmage, all of a sudden, we heard this big crash, and everybody looked over because it was on the side where Coach Rupp had been. And if you remember Memorial Coliseum in those days, it may still be that way. I've been there recently, but I don't remember. The first 8 to 10 rows of seats were folding chairs. And he had grabbed one of those chairs and thrown it about eight rows up in the stands. He was so frustrated and screaming. And so we kept going, and it just kept not improving, and in fact getting somewhat worse. And so finally he called a halt, and he said, "Okay, you blankety blankety blanks, nobody's eating any blankety blankety blank turkey. We're going to stay here in this coliseum, and we're going to play basketball until we learn how to play this game." And so that's what we did. We practiced twice on Thursday, twice on Friday, twice on Saturday. We only went once on Sunday because Coach Rupp had his basketball show early Sunday evening, so he couldn't be there. But that was the most grueling weekend of sports that I've ever experienced. And so you can imagine what the players were going through. But somewhere during that time, things started to click. And we came out of that weekend, and things were starting to go better. People were moving with the ball and moving without the ball, and things were just clicking. And by Christmas, we were 10-0 and on to our way to being one of the best teams in the country. So a salute to Coach Rupp. He saw what he had there, and he couldn't get it out of him, but he stayed after him and just pulled it out of him. And a great salute to the players, because the grueling environment that they were in could have easily broken and gone the other way, and we could have had a very sorry season. But it was a great season and an experience that I'll never forget. And the thing that really made the difference is that somewhere there they all got together and started trusting each other and throwing the ball to the open man and not caring about who scored, just as long as we were playing to the best of our ability. And so you remember that team, if you saw them, the ball just never stopped moving. There were very few dribbles, if any. The ball just kept moving from player to player, and the players kept moving, and we were a great fast break team. And Coach Rupp, with their support, with the players' support, obviously couldn't do it without them, made that season happen. And it just shows you, if you really commit, you got some talent, and you practice and you really commit and play together, that you can be a lot better than what people expect out of you.
Well, that's what made that team, because there was no expectations. Only Thad Jarris was a newcomer, and he was not, a third-team high school All-American or something. And they kept winning, and all of a sudden the state started noticing, and just kept going. And they did pass that ball. They were all good ball handlers. And I remember Larry Conley against zones. He would penetrate the middle, then kick out in the corner to either Riley or Dampier. Of course, they were excellent shooters, and hustle. And, it was great when they had like a 3-on-2 or 2-on-1 fast break. The way they just moved that ball between the two guys, it really was fun to watch. Of course, I was very impressionistic at that time, but there'll never be another Rupp Schrunts as far as I'm concerned. And that's part of it too, the tallest guy being 6'5".
Yes, yeah, they were only out-rebounded, I think, a couple of times during the season. They really worked hard at blocking out. I mean, they had been drilled to the point of being drilled into the floor almost, but to their credit, they responded to that, and they got to the right spot, and they blocked out. And I remember a sequence in the newspaper where, I'm sure it was actually about 2 seconds, but a photographer caught one of our players coming off the defensive backboard with the ball, with a rebound, turning and hitting one of our guards at midcourt, who hit one of our forwards, breaking under the basket and laying it in. And that all happened with 1 second going off the clock. He had caught the scoreboard just right. And like I say, it was probably just before the second, but I've always remembered that sequence because they were great at taking that ball and getting the outlet pass and getting it ahead to the next guy. It was just an incredible team effort that made them better. And as at the end of the year, one of Coach Rupp's comments was, "This team has provided us with a wonderful winter of entertainment." And I think everybody that watched them play that year would agree to that. So it's a story I'll never forget. It shows you the power of focus and practice and determination, and then teamwork. Playing as a team, agreeing to a goal and working at it as hard as you could, and then having great leadership like we did with Tommy Cron and Larry Conley. So that's something I'll always remember.
Yeah, that was quite. When you mentioned the sequence getting the rebound and going down to the other end, the ball probably never hit the hardwood.
That's right. Yeah, they caught it, fired it out to midcourt, and fired it down to the guy breaking down.
Yeah.
And because as soon as anybody saw that we had the ball and they were anywhere toward backcourt, they took off for our goal. And so it was the only better outlet pass I ever saw was from Wes Unseld.
Yeah, okay.
He was just the most incredible outlet pass center that I think has ever played. But, and then that was the story of Rupp's runs.
Yeah, that was quite a team, no question about it. And of course, ended in bitter disappointment. Back then, Mike, you remember there was no day in between the semifinals and finals. And
yes.
Beat Duke on a Friday night, and we thought that was it. Texas Western played, I think it was Kansas, and we never even focused on Texas Western, and we thought that was a championship, the Duke game, because they were like third in the country, I think it was, and thereabout. Davison was right up there at the top. Lefty had that program going, and we kind of thought we'd won the championship, and bitter disappointment that championship game.
Yeah, next week maybe I'll talk more about the Final Four and what happened there, because obviously I was sitting right on top of it. So it was a sad, disappointing ending.
Yeah, that it was. Well, folks, we appreciate you listening again. I'm going to give the email address one more time. It's chatwildcats@gmail.com. Chatwildcats@gmail.com. And we look forward to speaking with you again next week. Take care.
Thank you for listening to Kentucky Basketball Then and Now. Mixed by sensational audio expert Daniel Dottridge of Atlanta Podcast Recording, with web hosting by Buzzsprout. On behalf of hosts Gary Waddell and Mike Harreld, go Big Blue.